Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I have still got Matt Farah because he is just being an angel from the city of angels, giving me his time to geek out about cars. Although I don't remember, I haven't met too many angels who drop F-bombs like Matt does, but it's fine.
Sorry. I'm a dirty, awful boy.
No, man, I specifically, before we got into this, I was like, I am, because I listened to your podcast, several times, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to tell them. I don't want people to censor themselves. If we were live on the air right now, of course, you know as well as I do, I
really, really could if I have to, but I'm not very good at it. When I was growing up, I used to get yelled at for having a filthy mouth all the time, and now and that is like the defiant side of me. It's just like, you know what? I'm gonna earn a living with this filthy mouth, so you can,
So right, I'm not going to ask anybody to censor themselves because it's refreshing to me almost in this day and age. Now, I wouldn't go to some sort of mixed company formal thing and be dropping F-bombs or anything like that, but recording a podcast, recording a radio show, it doesn't bother me at all. So, what I was going to get at with the DeLorean before I had to cut it off for the break was what I adored about what you did with yours. And if anyone's listening, just catching us right now, Matt had a DeLorean like I still do. He got rid of it for various reasons. Go back to the podcast and listen why. But when he had it, what I love that you did to it when you restored it is you didn't... Let me put it this way. You know that show Overhauling?
Oof, yeah. Nice people. They're nice people who make that show.
Right.
But I know what you mean. You mean on like Pimp My Ride? That kind of thing?
It's like, I love the fact that you didn't put all sorts of destructive... You left it original, completely original. And when you were describing it after you bought it, after you got it back from restoration, you're like, look, here's a little tiny imperfection that I left here because it's only new once. And I adored the fact that you left... It's just a real, perfect example of a DeLorean. All the fit and finish and the panels were just so nice. Like, it's what a DeLorean should have been all along, and that's how you left it, and that's what I loved about it.
We made it like new plus, like the things that needed to be original and were in. I mean, basically everything you'd see on my car, the body panels, the glass, the carpeting, the floor mats, the complete interior, with the exception of the headliners on the doors. Mm-hmm. Everything else in that car was original, and then we took the original engine apart. And we put their, quote, stage 2 engine kit on it, which sounds, a little tunery, but it's basically heads, cams, headers, a better injection system. And then they replace all these, like, plastic tanks with metal tanks and metal lines and metal fittings. And they go through, they massage it a bit, and so you go from 135 to about 210 horsepower. Yeah. And it sounds pretty cool. They make with the exhaust. It sounds sort of like a Ferrari Dino, actually.
Right. Nice and cammy.
It sounds like it's got a good caminess to it. It's at idle. It almost sounds like a Porsche, and then when you wind it out, it almost sounds like a Ferrari Dino, or like a Lancia or an Alfa V6. And then, it was cool. Like it was a lovely car. It just, the problem I have with, I don't have a problem with anything. People can do anything they want with anything, with any car they have, and I could care less. But, a lot of people think about engine swapping DeLoreans, which seems like a good idea because if you read about them, the most common complaint is that they are not fast.
Right.
Which they are not fast.
Correct.
But what you don't hear about is that them being fast isn't actually the biggest problem, because I've driven several different, quote, fast DeLoreans. Right. Including one that had like a twin-turbo Grand National motor in it.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Supposedly made like 550 horsepower, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay, great, except what happens to the chassis? Do you know, if you look up what a DeLorean chassis looks like, and I'm sure, Johnny, that you are well aware of what a DeLorean chassis looks like.
Yep.
It shares the chassis with a car called a Lotus Esprit.
Hell yeah.
Which it's funny that the Lotus Esprit is known for good handling. I just recently drove one at a racetrack in Texas, actually, north of Dallas.
Yep.
And it handled like garbage. It handled like absolute garbage. And the Y-frame chassis that the Lotus Esprit shares with the DeLorean is a garbage chassis because it's basically one I-beam running down the center with a fork at either end.
Right.
And so if you put power through one, all it takes is the torsion on one piece of metal, and you've now twisted the chassis.
Exactly. But modern DMC in Houston and
Houston DMC, yes.
Aren't they working on a new composite, like fiberglass chassis?
Right. So now we go into how the car's actually constructed. So there's the Y-frame chassis, and then on top of the Y-frame chassis in original cars goes basically a fiberglass underbody that looks like most of a DeLorean if it were black. Right. Without the doors. Okay, so and then the body panels, which are stainless steel. Jesus, excuse me. Whoa,
come on. Matt.
That was almost like sacrilege there. They are stainless steel. They are not aluminum.
Right.
They go on top of the fiberglass thing. Now, the body panels themselves are non-structural, with the exception of the doors. And so what DMC Houston is working on, I think, is that fiberglass structure. They are having it remade in carbon fiber, so it actually becomes a structural member. Right. In theory.
So you don't get the torsion. Because they want...
That's the theory, yeah.
They're developing... I think they're still working out the details of who the supplier is going to be. I haven't asked Steven in a few months about this, but they're sourcing an engine, 300 to 400 horsepower, last I checked. And my first thought was, okay, so you want to make 2000 quote unquote 2018 VIN number DeLoreans. They're not technically brand. Well, I guess they are and there aren't. It's new old stock that they're retrofitting.
It's this low volume manufacturer thing. Right. They can sell up to 300 cars a year without them requiring modern safety standards. So they don't even put airbags in them or crash test them. And they sell them as the layman would say kit cars. Technically, they would not be kit cars. They would be like low volume production cars. Anyway, continue. I'm sorry.
That's all right. So my first thought when they were sourcing, they said, "Oh, the new motor to fit modern EPA standards and everything is going to be between 300 and 400 horsepower." And my first thought was the frame of the DeLorean. I was picturing a DeLorean just twisting like a pretzel anytime you put your foot on the accelerator. It's like
100%.
They're going to have to do way more structural bracing, and like how are they going to put, like, maybe a roll cage would help? What are they going to do to the DeLorean's DNA to make it handle?
Because of the way the doors work by going into the middle of the roof. I mean, you can't really put a cage in one. I mean, well, maybe you could, but I don't know how much structure it would actually add, being that I don't think there's anything really metal for you to weld a cage to.
It's so
where would you weld the cage in a DeLorean? I don't even know if you could.
Right. So that was the question, and that's what they're going to have to be figuring out. As the British would say, the boffins have to figure out how you're going to handle the 400 horsepower in a DeLorean. It has to be
a carbon monocoque underneath the stainless steel panels. But I mean, dude,
they're going to have to figure it out.
Dude, your car, I know. Anyone who's driven a DeLorean knows, okay, that whatever you have to do to one to make it drive great is not worth doing.
Right.
Everyone who's ever done it has the same story. The problem with owning a DeLorean and being a quasi-celebrity like you or I is that anyone else who sees something about a DeLorean goes, hey, I can connect with this celebrity on this level. But the problem is 10,000 people send me the same thing.
Yeah.
And I've seen it. We've seen it all. You've seen everything there is to see about DeLoreans. I've seen everything there is to see about DeLoreans, okay?
Yeah.
And yet, once a month, someone emails me the link about the guy who put the LS motor in the DeLorean.
Yeah.
And goes, yeah, you should have done that.
Yeah.
Dude, you ever hear one peep from that guy about how that car actually drives or gets around a corner or anything? Like, Dude,
I
you
heard
put
him-
an LS motor in a DeLorean, you put your foot to the floor, that car is going to tear itself in half.
Right. The other thing I did hear, and I think he had a YouTube video he put out. He said, "What truly makes something like this? What truly makes it terrifying is like what you said earlier. The brakes are terrible.
The brakes.
The brakes are like a cement truck's brakes.
Yeah,
That's what it feels like.
You know,
so.
the front wheels are 14 inches. There's just and they're single piston caliper. There is simply nothing you can do. There's a company in England actually that makes some upgraded brake kit for the DeLorean. It's like a full, it's a new rotor, a new caliper, and lines, all this stuff. And I asked Steve Witt at DMC about that kit, and it was like $6,000 or it was a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
And Steve Witt was like, "Yeah, I drove on one once. It was whatever." And I'm like, "I don't want whatever for $6,000." And he was like, there's just nothing you can do. A DeLorean, you can add a little bit of power, you can change the sound a little bit, but there's just nothing you can do to them to make them really drive good at anything but a cruise. And
so here's my appreciation. Here's what everyone listening needs to know about DeLoreans and about a lot of classic cars. For instance, the biggest knock on the DeLorean is it's not fast. No, it's not fast. But if your criteria of what's a great classic car is just what's fast and what's not, you're going to have to eliminate 90% of your list because
you have to eliminate any car built before 2005.
Exactly.
I mean, really,
exactly.
Anything that was fast before 2005 is. If that's your objective measure,
right?
Everything's a hunk of crap.
The new Tesla Roadster is supposed to do 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. Our definition of what's fast and what's not, is completely screwed now. So what I'm saying is, with the DeLorean and other classics, you need to just appreciate them as works of art, just as classic cars, as something unique to love and behold and look at and appreciate. I'm not taking my DeLorean.
You can certainly look. There are certain cars that take to modifications pretty well, you know, and there are certain cars that you can make them go a little quicker, make them handle better. I mean, I've driven, my share of resto mods. I've driven 68 Camaros that will smoke a Ferrari 458. You know what I mean? You could do anything with almost anything.
Right.
But just for DeLoreans, I have to say there are a lot of things that make that car unique.
Right.
But those things that make that car unique also hamper your ability to quote improve on. There's not a point. I think even if you're a pretty serious enthusiast, your money could be spent on any other number of things. You could buy a DeLorean and a 911 for what it would take to turn a DeLorean into something that handled like a 911.
Right, exactly. There's only one mod that I would consider doing to my car, and we'll get out of this segment and we'll get into the next segment after this.
If you have any audience left on this one,
there's probably still a couple people just hanging on.
Yeah.
Next segment we're not talking about DeLorean, so anyone listening, just stick. I promise we'll move on a little bit. The only thing I do to the DeLorean is, there's two things. One, just get it up to 200 horsepower. I have been in the 130 horsepower DeLorean stock, in a 200 horsepower DeLorean. 0 to 60 in around 6-7 seconds in a 200 horsepower DeLorean it's night and day difference from bone stock.
Yeah, it's like the difference between horrible and okay, it'll get out of its own way.
Right, it's a difference between horrible and now it can keep up with a Camry. Maybe.
Yeah, it also makes it sound a lot better. It sounds real cool with the headers and the proper exhaust on it.
Right. Yeah. So I do that, and I would also look into some sort of way to beef up the brakes just a little bit.
There isn't. I mean, there just isn't.
We just talked about it.
You can, even if you got a high performance pad and a high performance fluid, that will help you with repeated stops, which is an issue. I mean, certainly I would do that no matter what. But literally, the only options available, I don't know, maybe. I mean, I don't know why someone wouldn't have done it already, but the Esprit brakes could be better than the DeLorean brakes, maybe.
Just any improvement, like stopping by an extra 30 feet would be.
30 feet is a lot. That's a lot.
That's what I'm saying.
It's you got to look far ahead in one of those cars.
Right. But my first car was a Volkswagen Beetle, a 1974 Beetle.
Oh my God.
I know all about
slow.
But slow, but also if you're talking about bad brakes, the brakes in an old Bug are truly, like, legitimately horrifying.
Yeah. Yep. I know. I anything. Oof. I don't like Beetles. No. I don't like Beetles at all.
Okay. Well, that's it for this segment. We'll wrap it up with the last segment here. Couple of commercials we'll play that Matt and I will be oblivious to because the magic of recording radio. We'll just get right back into it. So, Geek, stick around while you're at it. If you're not driving, go to smokingtire.com. Is that right?
Yeah. You can get to all of our media from smokingtire.com.
Right, all the YouTube, all the social, all that good stuff. So in this break, go follow, like, and subscribe to all of the Smoking Tire stuff. And also, type in Geek Therapy Radio while you're at it. And go like all my stuff, too. And I promise, in the next segment, we'll wrap it up. We're not going to talk about DeLoreans anymore. I'm going to put my foot down. I could talk about DeLoreans for hours and hours and hours on end, but that's not interesting to a whole ton of people. In big bursts, 30-minute bursts. So we're going to talk about other things coming back. So stick around, my geeks. I got Matt Farah. We're going to be right back in just a couple of minutes.